Thanks so much for staying with us here on eNCA as we continue our coverage focusing on the state of transport, in particular public transport in South Africa. Millions of us depend on the public transport system daily. Our reporters are out and about across the country looking at what works and what simply isn't. Ronald Masinda is part of the team. He's live for us at the Cape Town train station. And Ronald, rail commute is very important in Cape Town because millions of people depend on it, but it's also had serious disruptions over the years.
Yes, indeed. And what we also learned earlier, having travelled from Kwalanga to Cape Town train station, was the issue of the delays. Now, Tembekile, we travelled on a 12-kilometre trip that took us well over an hour. And many people have been left frustrated, saying that this is part of their daily struggle. Now, we do know the issues that have plagued PRASA in the past. But for now, let's just get the latest from PRASA Board Chair, Mr. Leonard Ramatlakane. Mr. Ramatlakane, thank you so much for your time. Now, one of the main issues has been that central line. We were on board in Kwalanga and we saw things run smoothly in terms of people getting on the train and with security involved. But the issues are the delays. What seems to be the problem at this stage with the central line?
Well, as you know, that the central line has been dysfunctional for more than a year, because of the problem and the damage that was done. They vandalized, the rail ripped apart, the OTHE ripped apart, so there's been nothing there. So the process has been, now that we embarked upon, is to rebuild it, refurbish the central line. And you know that we have put a deadline that we should be in the next half of the year. Otherwise, October, November, that line must be fully operational. So that's what we're doing. Okay.
Will that deadline be met? Because we are seeing quite a lot of people squatting along those rail lines.
We want that deadline to be met. Last week, the PRASA in the Western Cape has approached the High Court in terms of the application to help us help the people that are squatting or illegally on the rail line to be moved, so that we can start fixing the line, so that we can bring back the train by the second half of the year, November, so on. So we want to meet the deadline. The delay may only be because the knock-on effect may well be that the delay takes to get the people off. It's a delay that affects our work in terms of repair. But we are determined to get to that point.
One of the issues that have been flagged in the past with regards to PRASA has been that PRASA has not been making money. So how does PRASA plan on become more profitable in order to also save jobs? Many people still need jobs at PRASA.
Yeah, well, it is not profitable because, as you know, if they are not able to collect fare, people are not paying, trains are not running, PRASA won't make money. So that's a challenge. Obviously, at the moment, what we now have is we have been engaging with the Department of Transport as well as the Treasury to make sure that they help PRASA to be able to get back its feet, to get to the former glory of PRASA so that it's able to generate income. Only at that point they will be able to make money. But for now, we know that rail is a subsidized form of transport by national government. We will ride on the subsidization as we bring back rail, and people are starting to pay to generate income so that PRASA is also self-sufficient. So that's the process that we are embarking upon going forward.
All right, thank you so much for your time, sir. Well, Tembekile, one of the issues that has also been flagged with regards to the rail is the issue of vandalism and trains being gutted down here in the Western Cape. Now, what we do know is that PRASA has since been allocated 1.4 billion rand to get that central line up and running. This central line forms a large part of people who come from areas such as Khayelitsha and Mitchell's Plain, people who used to use the central line. And since the central line has become defunct, many people have now had to resort to taxis as a form of transportation. And many say that they find trains to be more effective in terms of it's cost effective, cost less than taxis. The train ticket that we spent on just to come here to Cape Town, we spent 8 rand, which is almost double to what you would have spent on a taxi coming from Langa.
eNCA reporter Ronald Masinda live for us at the Cape Town train station. For now, thank you. Millions of South Africans rely on the taxi industry to get to work, school and other destinations daily. But the mode of transport comes with its own challenges. Mawande Keswa is in Durban, where he's been speaking to commuters about their experiences. And Mawande, what exactly is the experience of the average taxi commuter in the KZN area?
For the most part, it's positive sentiments. I recall one of the gentlemen that I spoke to actually said that he's happy at the fact that taxi operators are taking what they do as a business, making sure that they as commuters are well taken care of, they're respected, and that for them is something that is positive. Another gentleman also said that what they are happy about is the fact that when they step out of their house, getting into a taxi is a very easy thing to do because you get it on the streets close to home. And when it comes to the taxi rank, there are always taxi marshals who are checking where are you going. This is where the taxi that you're going is situated. You can go in there, they get into the taxis, everyone has their mask on, and that's something for them that is playing a big part in their experience, which overall they say is a pleasant one. There was one lady, though, who echoed a bit of dissatisfaction at the fact that for her, she says that she spends a lot of time waiting for the taxi to get full. And that is an inconvenience where she's in a taxi for almost an hour and it's not getting full. One of the other things as well is the taxi fare. Some commuters do feel as though it's at a point where it's quite high, and with the expected increase between June and July, it's going to make matters worse for them, as some people are unemployed and use taxis to commute to areas where they attempt to find employment.
Let's talk about another problem then, Mawande, that's rife not only in KZN's taxi industry. That's the issue of violence, often between owners and associations. I'm wondering how heavily that weighs possibly on commuters as far as possibly being caught in the crossfire.
Well, we've seen a number of incidents where taxi violence really was at its height, and that did trickle down to affecting commuters as well. I recall in Ndwedwe, it's one of the areas where taxi violence was quite rife. We did speak to Santako about the matter, and this is what they had to say.
It is an issue whenever there is a violence, and then it affects our commuters. On that side, we are unable to tackle it as we speak now, because it happens everyone when it's not ready that there will be a violence or there will be a shooting that will take place on that particular place.
Mawande, let's leave it there for now. Mawande Keswa, part of our transport focus, giving us the view from taxi commuters in the Durban area. Now, we're going to come to Gauteng now, because not everyone gets across on the normal metro rail lines as well as taxis. There's a thing in Gauteng, a rather expensive transport mode, in fact, and I'm talking about the Gau train. It has been hailed for being quite efficiently run as a public transport service, but it comes at great cost financially. While the service may be safe, convenient and efficient, budgeting for the Gau train's routes daily digs deeper at the pockets of each commuter. Mangoba Mtunu is watching that angle for us and joins us this lunchtime. And let's speak then, Mangoba, about the experience of Gau train passengers and why they choose that, even though it's so pricey.
Well, Tabekele, it really boils down to the issue of reliability as well as safety, and that's the sentiment that we've gotten from some of the commuters who use the Gau train on a daily basis. In fact, we did speak to quite a number of them. Some of them will say they commute with the Gau train from Johannesburg to Pretoria on a daily basis, and some of them will say they simply use it to get to the airport. You know that it does have a service that goes to the airport, which is a service between Sandton and OR Tambo that takes you literally 15 minutes to get to the airport. And of course, you know that by road, this might seem much more impossible, given the fact that at any stage you could, face traffic on some of our roads. So they're saying, Tamigile, that the comfort, as well as the fact that you can plan your trip ahead of time, and the Gautrain trains themselves do arrive on time. That makes it much easier for them to be able to dig deeper into their pockets and to actually use the Gautrain in order to get to their various destinations. So many of them saying, of course, that they don't mind digging deeper into their pockets to pay for this service simply because they believe that it's reliable and it's safe, and that it's a service that is really value for money when it comes to commuting here in Gauteng. But of course, not everybody can afford to use the Gautrain. As you'll know, Tembegile, that a single trip between Johannesburg and Pretoria could cost you anything between 68 Rand off peak and 84 Rand to 86 Rand during peak time. So it is not quite the cheapest, but those who are certainly taking it, Tembegile, saying that it is value for money given that they are able to, plan their trips and arrive on time during their trip. So those are some of the factors. But earlier on, I did speak to some of the commuters. In fact, I spoke to one of the ladies who says that she travels every day. She buys a weekly ticket. It sets her back about 400 Rand per week, which means on a monthly basis, she spends around about 1,200 to commute daily to work. But she says that the experience is a pleasant one, and she's even willing to pay for the service. But take a listen to Begile to what she had to say.
It's the prices of Gautrain, and we're prepared to pay it for the reliability. I think it's the best mode of transport for South Africa since it started, and we really enjoy it. It's safe, it's reliable, it's on time. Yes.
The sad reality, though, Mangoba, of the Gautrain is even the people who take it often are people who can afford to use other means, which then leaves out the greatest section of the population, the poor, who are the ones who need reliable public transport most.
Indeed. In fact, that's been the criticism of some of the organizations, account the likes of the SACP, COSATU, who have been saying that, the likes of Gautrain are simply not designed for the greater population from the low-income areas. In fact, that's been one of their arguments. We do know that there are plans by Gautrain Tembegile to actually expand their network to reach areas like Soweto, areas like Cosmo City, to try and reach those particular areas. But the Competition Commission also coming out saying that, looking at the service and looking at the cost that is being provided by Gautrain and the exorbitant fees, of course, which cannot be afforded by a majority of people from those low-income areas. That's one of the reasons why they say possibly that this expansion will still, result in a two-tier system of those who are able to afford and also those who are not able to afford. But certainly those who say that they can afford to use the service say they are quite happy to continue paying the amounts that they are paying to ensure that they receive a service that is reliable, a service that is also safe at all times.
Mangoba Mkhunu out and about on the streets of Johannesburg looking at the Gautrain system, one of the more efficient ways to get around if you're using public transport. But we've not only been looking at the issue of price this Monday, we've also been looking at efficiency. And Linda Guhle has been out and about in Johannesburg as well. Now, Linda Guhle tried earlier to get around the city taking a metro rail train, but that plan had to be abandoned. He joins us now to talk more about why, Linda Guhle, you eventually had to take a taxi instead.
Well, Tembegile, we were looking at options that one could get around using the public transport in Gauteng. And I can tell you one of the problems that Metro Rail has is that many of their corridors have been vandalized. There have been theft in some of the stations during the COVID-19 lockdown. And that is why we had now resorted to an alternative plan of actually using the taxi. And we had to then walk from Park Station in Johannesburg to move to the MTN rank in fact, Johannesburg. And one of the things that we found was the taxi is quite efficient for those who are using it. I can tell you that the queues are quick to be taken. In fact, the vehicles are the ones that are waiting for people. But as soon as the taxi is filled, it is then moving towards the CPD in Pretoria, the capital city. And one of the things that we found when we were engaging and speaking with some people there was the fact that they themselves quite find it satisfactory to be using the taxi. They're saying it's quite quick, about 30 40 minutes or so to move from Johannesburg in north to Pretoria. So they are saying that despite the fact that there are other options of traveling, such as the Gautrain, that even the difference being a bit slightly small, if you look at the fact that the Gautrain is about 68 rands to get to Pretoria, and you look at checking the taxis about 50 rand. So one of the things they did say was that every cent counts. But on another issue, Tembegile, I think that one that is not talking about a lot when we talk about the Gautrain, you talk about other modes of transport when it comes to alternatives. One thing they say is that the people who are using taxis are people who are going to specific areas, and that the Gautrain as well as the metro rail itself are some of the modes of transport that don't necessarily take you to certain specific areas. You'd find that there are stations in various number of places, but they do not necessarily take you. For example, when you get to Soweto, the only place where you can get a train, it starts in Naledi station, and when you're a person who lives in Dobsonville and other areas, that does not happen. It's quite difficult to be catching a train. So people are saying that it's more specific, it's more precise in terms of where they are going. But certainly they did raise some concerns around some of the safety issues that mushroom every now and then in terms of the taxi violence and all of that. But they're saying that on a normal basis, particularly on that route from north to Pretoria, that they find it quite satisfactory, that the taxis are always available, they're very quick to get to that destination, and to those that are going to specific areas that other modes of transport are not able to reach, the taxi is always the answer for them.
Lindokuhle, thank you very much for that. Lindokuhle, looking at a comparison between the metro rail train system as well as taxis.